And welcome back. In today's housing market update, I'm going to provide my own analysis of Realtor.com's latest housing market trends. So in today's video, I'm going to touch on asking prices in the US, price reductions, housing inventory, and of course, much more. I'll provide a summary at the end of this video, as well as some predictions of what may lay ahead with our US housing market. This is actually my favorite video I make every single week for you guys. So thank you so much for joining me in today's video. Let's go ahead and dive right in. This is based on a brand new report from Realtor.com just posted on June 1st, which is today. And just like my previous videos, I did not even read their analysis. Instead, go to realtor.com/research/data. Click on this link right here. It takes you to this information right here. So the most recent trends we have is actually for the week ended May 27th this year. Let's first talk about asking prices, because last week asking prices only increased by 0.8%. This is a new trend because we saw a slight increase compared to the previous week. Last week it was a gain of 0.7%. Now it's a gain of 0.8%. So like I mentioned in my previous videos, I was stating here that by the end of May and also by potentially in June, we were likely to see negative price growth for asking prices. That trend actually got reversed though, because we saw a gain of 0.8%, a small increase of 0.1% compared to the previous week. It's going to be interesting to see what happens regarding this in the weeks ahead, because historically speaking, we have a low amount of houses for sale, down by about 20% compared to the same time frame in 2022. And because inventory levels are not skyrocketing like they did at this time back in 2022, that's causing asking prices to remain fairly flat over the past few weeks here. So there's that, but also this as well, because the changes in asking prices is drastically different compared to about 1 or 2 months ago. So for example, 2 months ago, asking prices increased by 6.3% year over year. Now it's only a gain of 0.8%. Also, as a note right here, except for the previous week, this gain of 0.8% is actually the smallest year over year gain going back to April of 2020. Obviously, April 2020 was more impacted by COVID lockdowns than anything else. So in looking at the same week in 2019, asking prices increased by 6.7%. So in other words, compared to pre-pandemic levels, the growth rate right now of less than 1% is obviously much lower than the 6.7% that we saw during the same week in 2019. Additionally, for 24 consecutive weeks, we've been seeing single-digit increases in asking prices year over year. So that's asking prices. Have a look at housing inventory, because inventory levels only increased by 17.6% year over year. Now this is drastically different compared to just 1 month ago. So for example, in mid-April, we saw a 49.1% increase year over year. Now it's a gain of less than 20%. And by the way, this gain of 17.6% is actually the smallest increase going back to June last year. It's also half the gains we saw from about a month ago, of course, as well. Also, as a note right here, inventory levels have been mostly on a downward trend ever since early February this year due to a lack of new listings. In other words, we're not seeing the inventory levels fill up because new listings have been falling every single week so far this year. So a lack of new supply hitting the market, which is causing inventory levels to remain at historically low levels. On top of that, this is something new I added here because we're not seeing this giant growth year over year in housing supply, because inventory last year at this time was absolutely skyrocketing. In contrast, inventory has been decreasing so far this year. So inventory levels were increasing greatly in May last year, whereas this year it has been relatively flat, and also compared to January 1st this year, inventory is actually down. I have some charts to share with you guys regarding that, but let's first have a look at this, because for the week ended May 26th, we have approximately 433,000 houses for sale according to altosresearch.com. 1 year ago, it was 357,000. This means we have approximately 75,000 more houses for sale right now compared to the same time frame in 2022. However, though, we're still down by about 54% compared to the same week in 2019. So that's a growth rate of 21% compared to 12 months ago. And also, for comparison's sake, back in late February this year compared to late February 2022, it was a whopping gain of 76%. And now it's only a gain of 21%. Again, because inventory levels were skyrocketing in April and May last year, whereas this year, inventory levels have been relatively flat so far this spring home buying season, or lack of a home buying season, because we're seeing a huge decrease in demand. So regarding inventory levels, again, you can see right here, 433,000. 1 year ago, it was 357,000. But at 433,000, this is much less than the, 941,000 we saw back at the same time frame in 2019. In other words, a decrease of about 54%. Also, during the spring months of 2019, inventory was going up greatly, whereas this year, it has been relatively flat ever since February this year. And lastly, one more thing I do want to mention is that because the year-over-year changes of inventory have been decreasing, as you can see right here, inventory at 17.6% back in April 1st, it was a gain of 52%. The reason why this difference has been actually decreasing here is because this right here, inventory levels were absolutely skyrocketing starting in April of 2022. Let me just zoom in here. So April 2022, inventory levels were absolutely skyrocketing through really October last year. So inventory skyrocketing in the spring home buying season last year, whereas this year has been relatively flat ever since really February this year. And that, of course, is one of the main reasons why we're seeing inventory growth on a year-over-year basis actually going down, because inventory last year was absolutely skyrocketing, whereas this year we're not seeing that same effect, of course. And of course, the reason why we're not seeing that same effect is because new listings have been decreasing big time here. So last week, they decreased by 19.5% year over year. So new listings have been decreasing by double digits for 41 out of the past 44 weeks. A lack of new supply hitting the market, which is obviously a big problem here. This also marks the 47th consecutive week in which new listings are down compared to 12 months ago, dating back to early July last year, in fact. This is causing inventory levels to remain at historically low levels, especially compared to 2018, of course, 2019. Now, changing gears slightly here, let's talk about how fast or how slow houses are selling. So for 43 consecutive weeks, houses are taking longer to sell compared to the same time frame in 2022. So for 43 consecutive weeks, and last week, it took 13 days longer to sell a house compared to the end of May of 2022. Again, though, a friendly reminder, this is a lagging indicator based on closed home sales. Regarding the number of price reductions year over year, this is a very big change here, because last week it was a gain of 3.7%, which is absolutely insane, because going back to, let's just call it February 4th, it was a gain of 170% compared to the same time frame in 2022. Now it's a gain of 3.7%. And also just 1 month ago, we saw a gain of 61.3%. Now it's less than 4%. So we saw a big drop in the number of price reductions for the past month or so. It also has decreased for 15 out of the past 16 weeks. So I have two reasons for you guys why we're seeing the number of price drops actually shrinking compared to last year. And it's for two main reasons. So we're seeing smaller increases compared to last year due to decreasing inventory levels. In other words, fewer options for buyers, leading to bidding wars in some marketplaces. On top of that, the number of price drops last year at this time was absolutely skyrocketing, whereas this year has remained fairly flat for the past 3 months in a row. The best way to share this with you guys is to have a look at this. This is according to altosresearch.com for the share of price drops in the US. So right now, the share of price drops is at 30%. 1 year ago, it was 23%. Look what happened in the spring months last year, though, because ever since really April last year, the share was absolutely skyrocketing. The trough was right here at about 17%. And by the time we hit the end of May, it was at 23%. So the share price drops was increasing, whereas this year, relatively flat ever since really February this year. So for example, on February 17th, the 7-day average was 31%, and right now it's at 30%. Let's look at the same time frame last year though, because in mid-February last year, the share was just under 18, and by the time we hit May 27th, it was 23%. Albeit not a huge increase, but drastically different compared to what we're seeing this year. Fairly flat ever since mid-February this year. One more thing I do want to mention regarding the share price drops right now at 30%. This is much higher compared to last year at 23%, and also back in 2021 when it was just under 17%. But it's also higher compared to 2020 at 24%. But at 30%, this is on par with pre-pandemic levels going back to 2019 when the share was also around 30 to 31%. So big picture here, even though the share of price drops is much higher compared to the same time frame over the past 3 years, it's still on par with 2019's levels. Okay, if you guys are still watching today's video, I appreciate you. I want to provide a summary of today's video because, of course, that was a lot to cover, right? So number one, asking prices only increased by 0.8% last week compared to a gain of around 7% back in the same time frame in 2019. And that was one of the smallest increases in asking prices since approximately April of 2020, excluding the previous week. Number two, housing inventory increased by only 18% year over year according to Realtor.com. However, it has been on a downward trend ever since November last year. Obviously, it's more normal for inventory to fall in the winter months, but obviously entirely abnormal that inventory levels have not increased yet. They tend to increase in the spring home buying season. Also, new listings have been decreasing by double digits in 41 out of the past 44 weeks. This continued lack of new supply hitting the market is causing inventory levels to remain at historically low levels. Even though inventory is much higher now compared to 2021 and 2022 this time, it's still down by about 54% from 2019's levels. Number three, the average 30-year fixed rate is at 6.85% for people with exceptional credit according to the Mortgage News Daily as of June 1st, which is today. 6.85%. That's down from the 7.14% that we saw last Friday. And at that time, that was nearly a 7-month high. However, even though rates have been coming down ever since then, they're still up greatly compared to 1 year ago when average rates are at 5.5%. Number four, the number of price drops compared to last year has decreased in 15 out of the past 16 weeks. The share of price drops is at least a 3-year high during the same time frame, but it's on par with pre-pandemic levels. Number five, houses are taking longer to sell compared to the same week 1 year ago for 43 consecutive weeks. Again, though, this is a lagging indicator of our U.S. housing market. So what are some potential huge changes ahead given the fact that rates have been increasing greatly so far this year? Number one, average 30-year rates are 1.38 percentage points higher compared to 12 months ago. Also, there's lots of challenges right now. We have record low housing affordability, low inventory levels, and of course, elevated rates, and of course, a lot of uncertainty in our housing market, and of course, our economy as well. And number two, housing affordability is still a huge hurdle that home buyers are facing right now, especially compared to the past couple of years, because of course rates have more than doubled and also home prices have increased by about 39% compared to the same time frame in 2020 based on the median sold price in the US, according to Redfin. On top of that, mortgage rates were increasing fast in May. And on top of that, on a national level, home sold prices have increased by about 10% ever since February this year, based on data from Redfin. So rates increasing, but also home prices increasing as well, which of course is causing this huge housing affordability issue in the US. And also, as I mentioned right here, though, rates have been decreasing for about 3 days in a row to end the month of May here. And number 3, early signs of home buying demand have been absolutely all over the place this year due to the volatility in rates we've been seeing so far this year. The most recent data we have regarding applications for home loans to buy houses, according to the MBA, was down by 3% compared to the previous week. However, though, when looking at pre-pandemic levels, it's on par with the lowest levels going back to December of 2014. In other words, demand is still very, very low. Also, Redfin's most recent data shows that pending home sales, a measure of contracts being signed between buyers and sellers, decreased by 17% year over year, and also new listings fell by 24%. So in other words, a decrease in demand and also a decrease of new supply hitting the market. Also, the National Association of Realtors also reported on May 25th that pending home sales were flat in April compared to March. No changes on a month-over-month basis. However, pending home sales down by about 20% compared to April of 2022. Therefore, it appears our U.S. housing market is highly rate dependent and very volatile to say the least. And of course, a friendly reminder, real estate is local. Every housing market is different, right? And number 4, sellers and buyers have exited this housing market, leading to a dip of new listings and contracts being signed as well, especially compared to the past several years. This lack of new supply or new listings since last summer has led to inventory remaining at historically low levels, down by about 54% compared to May of 2019. If homeowners continue to decide that now is not a good time to sell their house, that will limit housing inventory. In my personal opinion, the direction of our US housing market is going to depend on inventory levels as well as average rates going forward. And number 5, I appreciate you guys supporting my YouTube channel and also for watching today's video. Please like and subscribe, and of course, share this with anyone who you feel may get some benefit out of it. Hope you guys have an awesome day. Look forward to seeing you on the next video.